January 11, 2026. Russia copies Iranian Karrar drone as Geran-5 plans to arm it with air-to-air missiles. Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're following the shifting landscape of modern conflict, especially the challenges facing Europe, well, you need to be informed. So, subscribe to Defense Reports. It's your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex, and joining me is Aria. Together, we provide sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news. And we've been tracking for years how these, inexpensive mass-produced drones have completely changed warfare.
They really have.
But it seems that threat is about to take a terrifying leap forward. Today, we're going to cover some intelligence reports alleging a new Russian system.
That's right. The news centers on the alleged development of the Geran-5. And sources are indicating it's a direct copy of the Iranian Karrar drone, which is jet-powered.
Jet-powered, okay.
But here's the kicker. Unlike the slow, propeller-driven Geran-2 or the Shahed 136, as you probably know it, the Geran-5 is reportedly being prepared to be armed with air-to-air missiles.
Wait, air-to-air, so a jet-powered drone that can hunt other aircraft. That's a monumental strategic shift.
It is.
So our mission in this deep dive is to really unpack the gravity of this. We're going to do that by first looking at the sheer volume of the drone threat in Ukraine right now.
Then we'll dig into the deep historical roots of the Russia-Iran tech cooperation that even made this possible.
And finally, what this new class of weapon really means for European defense.
And to really understand that future threat, you have to appreciate the present scale. I mean, this new capability is being built on an infrastructure that is already optimized for massive production.
Massive is the right word.
Get this. By late spring of 2025, one factory alone was reportedly pushing out an average of 170 Geran-2 drones per day.
170 per day.
Yeah.
That number is just staggering. It really raises the core question for me. What does it mean when a production line that's been churning out cheap, slow weapons suddenly gets an upgrade to produce a fast, jet-powered hunter-killer?
Exactly. The challenge shifts from, defensive attrition to something that could disrupt air dominance. And to truly grasp that jump, we have to look at the numbers from the existing drone war.
Okay, so let's dive into that data from 2025. I think we often hear stories, but the hard statistics, they really paint a picture of just relentless pressure.
They show a continuous, debilitating strain on Ukrainian defenses. If you look at July 2025, that month saw the highest total launches at 6,297.
6,000. So if you average that out, it's what, over 200 launches hitting the system every single day?
Every single day. And even when the volume dipped a bit, the average for the period between June and September was still around 5,400 drones launched per month. It's just an exhausting operational tempo to defend against.
And that volume is so crucial, especially when we talk about success rates. You hear about Western air defense systems boasting these really high interception rates.
In the high 90s?
Right. But in this context, does a 97% interception rate still feel like a win? Or is it a strategic failure?
That's a profound logistical and financial question, isn't it? The peak interception rate in February 2025 was 97.39%, which is technically impressive. It shows the skill and the technology.
What?
But that tiny percentage that gets through still represents hundreds of successful strikes a month. For example, in May 2025, we saw the highest relative number of hits, where nearly 18% of all launches resulted in a strike on a target.
And if we look specifically at the dedicated strike drones, not just reconnaissance or decoys, the numbers are even worse.
They are. Official Ukrainian estimates for September 2025 suggested that the Shahed Geran strike drones were about 58% of the total. That still means over 3,200 dedicated strike drones were launched in that single month.
So the fundamental insight here is that volume just consistently defeats cost. You're forced to use an expensive interceptor, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Or even millions.
Or millions, against a drone that might cost $20,000.
Exactly. So despite all these advanced countermeasures, Ukraine is dealing with thousands of drones hitting infrastructure every year. It's a war of attrition based purely on that asymmetrical cost.
Which brings us directly to how this enormous volume is even maintained, the Yelabuga production hub.
Right, and this isn't some back alley operation. It's a massive industrial commitment. The plan for the Yelabuga facility in Tatarstan was for 810 staff working 3 shifts.
Around the clock.
24 hours a day, just to meet those daily targets. We're not just talking about metal and circuitry. That's an assembly line that never stops.
And that kind of operation required a huge technology transfer from Iran, right? It confirms how deep this partnership really is.
Absolutely. Initially, the staff just didn't have the expertise. It required a lot of employees. By late spring 2023, it was 200 workers and 100 students to travel directly to Iranian drone factories for intensive hands-on training.
So this wasn't just a blueprint passed over a table.
No, this was direct industrial knowledge transfer. And since then, they've been hardening the site. As of August 2025, they were erecting defensive towers, putting Panzer anti-aircraft systems on top of them.
That level of defense just underscores how vital this production is to their war machine now.
It's indispensable. And this whole thing is only possible because of a long-standing historical network. This didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right, which brings us to the historical context. If we look back, this drone cooperation is really just the latest version of a decades-long technological exchange.
It really is. I mean, if you go back to the 1990s and early 2000s, there were repeated allegations that Russia was providing sensitive information and tech to Iran's missile program.
And what kind of technology are we talking about here? Not the missiles themselves.
Not whole missiles, no. We're talking about the core components you need for precision and reliability. Things like laser gyroscopes for navigation, specialized wind tunnels for testing aerodynamics, and critical design software. Russia denied it, of course, but the assistance seems to have laid the groundwork.
And that pattern, relying on external blueprints and then localizing production, that's also the story of Iran's own missile program, isn't it?
Precisely. You look at the Shahab-3 ballistic missile. It was reportedly based on Soviet tech, specifically Scud-type missiles that Iran bought from North Korea.
Yeah.
They acquired the platform, reverse-engineered it, and then moved to their own production. It's a cycle.
So this pattern just validates the idea of Russia now copying Iranian designs for the Geran-5.
It's built on historical precedent. We even saw that allegation back in 2006, though it was denied, that Ukraine had illegally exported Kh-55 cruise missiles to Iran. This global transfer of military tech it's a very complex web.
And to sustain this kind of production, you also need the manpower. We can't ignore the external labor involved here.
That's a key detail. As of June 2025, there were reports that North Korea had sent tens of thousands of workers to Russia.
Tens of thousands.
Specifically to help produce attack drones. When you need to maintain that 2.47 high-volume output, Russia is clearly tapping into any labor pool it can to keep the lines moving.
Okay, so we have the industrial base, the history of cooperation, the manpower, and now that entire infrastructure is potentially about to produce this fast, missile-armed drone.
Which forces us to look at our third pillar.
Yeah.
How is Ukraine adapting to survive this, and what are the long-term implications for all of Europe?
Ukraine's necessity has been the mother of invention throughout this conflict.
Truly, while they rely on high-tech Western air defense, the sheer volume has forced them to adapt these unconventional, cheaper counter-drone tactics.
The ingenuity is just remarkable. I mean, the reports of Ukraine arming small agricultural crop dusters with missiles to go hunt drones, it's a perfect example of that flexible, decentralized approach.
It is. It shows that when you face a cheap, decentralized threat, you need a cheap, decentralized response. You can't fire $1 million missile at every single drone. And interestingly, that philosophy is actually reflected in systems used by Iran itself.
How so?
Well, take their AD-08 Majid system. It's an indigenous air defense platform, but it's mounted on a light commercial vehicle, like an Iveco daily 4x4 truck.
So not a big, heavy military chassis.
Right. The choice of a durable, widely available commercial truck is central to this idea of modern distributed air defense. It's mobile, low cost, and easy to maintain. All things you need to counter a high-volume drone swarm.
But this new Geran-5 feels like it fundamentally changes the conversation. It's not just a tactical defense problem anymore, it's a strategic offense problem. If you add jet speed and air-to-air targeting, this is no longer a regional skirmish. It's a long-term threat to Europe.
And that raises the critical question. We can trace the seriousness of this kind of concern back over 2 decades. As far back as 2002, analysts were assessing the threat from Iranian missiles like the Shahab-4, which was reportedly based on the Soviet SS-4.
The SS-4. That was an intermediate-range missile, a huge part of the Cold War. That historical context must have really elevated the concern in Europe.
It absolutely did. The assessment back then already anticipated that upgrades to the Shahab-4 would eventually allow it to reach most of Western Europe. So this pursuit of long-range advanced capabilities has always been about threatening the wider continent. The Geran-5 is just the 21st century version of that strategic reach.
And it's a far more complex challenge than an ICBM because it's so flexible. I mean, if the Geran-5 really can carry air-to-air missiles, it suddenly threatens slow-moving NATO assets.
Yes, Things like ISR platforms, AWACS planes operating near the front lines, maybe even commercial air traffic. That's the key implication for NATO. It turns this from an artillery problem into a strategic deterrence puzzle.
So you can't just rely on localized defenses against something moving that fast?
No, it forces a total reevaluation of the air strategy for the entire eastern flank.
Wow.
And that's why, at the end of the day, the deepest challenge for European defense is not the capability of a single advanced drone. It's the sheer logistical and financial strain created by defending against tens of thousands of cheap, mass-produced systems hitting your infrastructure year after year.
And that volume is now being coupled with increasing sophistication.
Precisely. Moving from a piston-engine drone to a potential jet-powered, missile-armed platform that is the true compounding long-term headache that Europe must plan for.
It's the asymmetry that just keeps defining this conflict. Thank you. This was a crucial breakdown.
My pleasure.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.